got a great film to play,
Hello?
Have you ever snubbed a lady?
We had a technical problem.
Oh, we're on?
Yeah, we're on there.
Can I swear? Shit!
Welcome to Crunch and Roll. It's a podcast about the side of the radio industry that most people never hear about, featuring some of its most interesting characters. My name is John Fox, known to some as Foxy, and what qualifies me to present Crunch and Roll? Well, I worked my way through hospital radio, presented commercial radio breakfast shows in some of England's biggest cities, and even dabbled in the BBC. Today's guest is one of those rare breed of presenters that have managed to stay at the same couple of stations for their entire career. That longevity makes them legends in their areas, and today's guest, Nigel Freshman, known as Fresh, is no exception. And after decades working at Beacon in the West Midlands, he can't even walk down Bilston High Street without getting mobbed. He's now approaching a decade at the current station too, so I try and find out his secret of not getting sacked, his role in one of the most cited cases in media law training, and discover what caused me to say this.
Nope, I've never felt so awkward talking about something with anyone.
Before we start, just a quick reminder that if you do enjoy the podcast and you are a regular listener, we would be eternally grateful if you could support us on Ko-fi. Just go to ko-fi.com/crunch and roll. And thanks to everybody, genuinely, thank you so much to everybody who supported us recently, including the lovely people at aircheckdownloads.com. And if you've never checked out the site before, firstly, you're officially not a real anorak. And secondly, you're missing out on what is probably the biggest archive of UK presenter audio and jingles from the 80s right through to today. And you can even hear my last ever link on the radio there as well, where I might have had something in my eye. Anyway, there's plenty of strong language, bit of adult content in this episode, so let's crunch and roll. Oh yeah. Fresh, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm really good. Really good. It's lovely to see your face. It's been years.
I would say it's lovely to see your face, but you're sat in the dark with some kind of... It looks like you've got candles lighting your bonds.
Well, you're the first guest to highlight the fact that because I'm a proper Yorkshireman, I'm too tight to leave the lights on. So what I do is I turn all the lights off because I'm thinking this my octopus is going to be going through the roof if I turn any more lights on.
Oh, isn't there an energy saving session tonight? Or was that last night?
I don't know. I can't keep track. Can't keep track.
Well, call yourself a Yorkshireman? Oh, God, you should be straight on that. Turn everything off.
Interestingly, can I just say, before we hit record, you said to me, I don't know what you're going to find out about me because I'm not that interesting.
Yeah.
Do you mean that?
Yeah, absolutely genuinely. I never think I've got anything of interest to say.
But rightly so. You also said that for 30 years you've been talking on the radio, so you've obviously got something to say.
Well, I must have, but I've never known what it is. I mean, it's actually it'll be 34 years in April. 34 years next April since I started. And I blagged my way in to my first job. Because when I was a kid, I just wanted to be on the radio. And I never knew why. I just thought it was a cool thing. And, I used to sit in my bedroom. I think everybody that's ended up on the radio has always sat in their bedroom playing with jingles that they've recorded off the radio, pretending that they're on. And so I used to do that as a kid. And then I just hounded my way in. And I was only 18. Hounded my way into my first gig.
So what's interesting to me is that, I mean, we'll get onto this in a bit, but you and I met when, and you can get onto this later on if you would like, but I don't think our feelings of Orion Media are the same. But we met when I was at BRMB, you were at Beacon. And you were very quiet in the group meetings, and I think I was fairly quiet as well. And then you and I always say to people that you and I got on, like we got on.
Yeah.
Would you agree? You've gone quiet.
Well, you said actually, I suppose I want to just check really. What are we allowed to say, and what aren't we allowed to say on a podcast? Do we have the same kind of regulations as over on air? Are we at risk of defaming or libeling people?
All that, yeah. But what we do is we get all our episodes legally checked before they go out because I don't want to get sued.
Checked by who?
Well, just by my mate Gary.
Actual bloke. Oh, Dave, have a listen to this. Is that all right? What do you reckon? Yeah, it'll be fine. To be fair, that's always been my measure. I certainly was back in the day before everything got a little bit, compliancy. I was like, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody will complain if it's bad enough.
Well, let's go right back to the start. Because what I was trying to get onto was the fact that you and I met, and I don't actually know anything about you, apart from the fact that you've been on the wireless. Where are you from originally?
Birmingham, originally.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, so I think you can trace my family back through Birmingham history. Not that I've ever done that, so I don't know whether they've got any kind of Peaky Blinders heritage or anything, but that's where all my parents were from. All my parents, both of them. And then they moved out of Birmingham when I was about 2 or 3, I think. They came over to Telford because it was an exciting new town. And everybody from Birmingham and Wolverhampton came over here. Oh, sorry, that's an email. I don't know how to turn that off. So sorry, you might have to put up with that noise randomly appearing.
Let's see how popular you are over the next hour.
Not very. It's
email.
It's all octopus and spam, probably. So I left Birmingham when I was about 2, but that's where I'm from originally.
All right.
So was that the question you asked me?
Yeah, no, I just genuinely didn't know where you were from, and I'm quite surprised that you said Birmingham. I don't know why, but I just never knew that you were a Brummie.
Because I don't have a Brummie accent.
Probably.
And at the risk of offending all Brummies, I don't love the sound of my own voice and think I'm hilarious.
Okay, fair enough. Gary, can you check that bit? All right, so do you know? I mean, I think back to when I was at school. I always wanted to be a zookeeper. So when you were at school, you wanted to be on the radio. You knew from a very early age.
Always wanted to be on the radio, but like I say, I don't really know why. I don't know what it was about radio that just enchanted me, but something did, and I knew that's what I always wanted to do, so just fixed my mind on it. I mean, I left school when I was 16, and I did a YTS for a bit at Rumbelows, the electrical store.
Yeah.
Which was a good gig, actually, because even though you only got, so this is in the 80s, I think you got 27 quid a week or something kind of YTS, but Rumbelows on their YTS, you actually got commission. So, and you got the same commission as the employees. So back then, as a 16-year-old on a YTS on 27 quid a week, if you sold a TV, you'd get 10 quid commission.
Wow.
So I know. So and actually, I think it was if it was a discontinued model, you got they stuck 10 quid commission on it. So if somebody came in for a TV and video, I would always point them out to the discontinued ones. So hey, what about this TV and this video? They're great. And then if they bought them, that's 20 quid commission you got because they were both discontinued. And then if you flogged them the extra insurance, I think you got an extra £7.50. So if I just did one sale in a week of a TV and video with extra warranty, I doubled my wages. So
it's pretty good going.
It was a really good gig for a 16-year-old. But I left there and went to work somewhere else. I think I went to work for the MOD. I went to work at an MOD place, just as an admin person.
Is it true? I've got Rumbelows on my research. I haven't got the MOD, but I have got that you used to be a driving instructor.
Oh no, I've trained to be a driving instructor recently.
Really?
Yeah. So when did I start doing that? I think after the last round of D-Reg, which was 2019.
Yeah.
I thought, hey up, writing's on the wall here. And I thought, shit, I don't have a trade. I've got nothing to fall back on. So I thought, I've kind of winged my way through this for quite a long time. So I thought I ought to come up with some kind of backup plan. So I trained to be a driving instructor. And then I qualified. When did I qualify? 2021?
Right.
Like that? Yeah.
That's ready to go.
So I am. I was actually teaching people, real, bona fide people, giving them driving lessons. Felt like I had imposter syndrome the entire time. I was like, why have they let me do this? We discussed this, myself and Simon, who produces the pod, about you being a driving instructor, and we hadn't got that you've done it recently, but it made me think back to the guy that taught me. Was a guy called Pete Tyler, who I actually knew from hospital radio, and I was just wondering if you'd do the same thing. And I think all radio presenters do it. If you're sat in the car and you're listening to the wireless,
we're different to everybody else on the planet because what we do is we turn the radio when someone's doing a link as opposed to when the music's... It's true, isn't it?
Yeah, turn the music down. Oh my God, shush. I'm really rude when there's people in the car with me because I'll just go... when whoever's on is doing a link because I want to listen to what they do and how they do it. Must be really frustrating for anybody that's in the car with you.
Just while we're on the subject of cars, I don't know if you annoy your family, but what I do is I always hit the link when I'm listening to a song. You know, I'm like, if they put a CD on or something, I talk up to the vocals.
Yeah, I think that just comes with the territory. You can't help yourself. Everybody likes to do a bit of jocking.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so you go from Rumbelows, you go to the MOD. I want to know how you move into radio. So you mentioned before that you blagged your way in.
Yeah, literally blagged my way in. By the way, I suppose I ought to throw out this as a disclaimer as well. I've also got ADHD, I found out this year.
Really?
So I got diagnosed with that about 3 or 4 months ago. So if that's probably what... So this is going to... I'm glad I don't have to edit this, because if I flit around randomly, that's why. Because it just that's the way it goes when you've got ADHD.
Can we just focus on that? Do you mind if we talk about it?
Do you mind if we just focus on that? Great words for somebody with ADHD. Yeah, I'd love to, but unfortunately, it's quite difficult.
Well, so what made you go and get diagnosed or get tested for it?
Over the years, I've always thought there was something that I'm dealing with in terms of some kind of, I don't know, my head, basically. I think everybody feels, especially these days, but, go back 20, 30 years, mental health wasn't talked about in the same way as it is now. Yeah. So I always wondered, is there something going on? I thought maybe I'm bipolar or, something, but none of those symptoms seem to fit. But anyway, this year, somebody I know got diagnosed with ADHD and they were trying to explain it to me. And I was like, that just sounds, I think everybody has that, don't they? Or kind of really flippantly just going, because I was just obviously only using my own experience, but it sounded like everything that goes on in my head. And they were like, no, I don't think you understand. So then they sent me this article on it, and reading down it, I was like, God, somebody's written about me. So from that, I got myself referred for an assessment, and you have to go through lots of kind of tests and speak to a consultant psychiatrist and all sorts of things, questionnaires. It's quite ironic. There's a lot of paperwork. And I was like, this is somebody who can't focus on paperwork. Why are you giving me all this? But yeah, you go through all that. And then at the end of it, they'll either go yay or nay. You have to go through everything from childhood, because obviously ADHD isn't something you develop. You've either got it from birth or you don't. Yeah. So it was really enlightening to find out that that's what it is, because now I can kind of figure out how I work and why I am the way I am. So it makes you blurt things, because your brain is obviously constantly thinking about a million and one things. It makes you quite forgetful. You tend to blurt things out without thinking. So, over the years, I think I have been very blunt and direct with lots of people, and not really you don't have much self-awareness either, because you kind of blurt stuff out. You don't think about it because your brain's already like a mile down the road from what you've said. Yeah. So I think I came across with a lot of people as very kind of blunt, direct, aggressive, whatever. But actually, there was no kind of ill intent meant. It was just the way your brain is. You just tend to blurt things, and sometimes really inappropriate things, because you're just not thinking about it, because your brain's like 3 steps ahead. Do you know,
it's interesting, because I was talking to someone recently who was, like yourself, diagnosed with ADHD later on in life. And she was saying that it when you get diagnosed, you think back and you go, shit, that's why I was like I was then. Yeah. That's why that situation.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think I got diagnosed about 4 months ago. So every day since, you'll go, oh my God, that explains this. And then also you'll go, oh shit, that I must have said that to somebody in a really, in the wrong way, or no wonder that person thought I was a twat, So all sorts of things come back to you. But yeah, it is really enlightening just to find out how your brain is wired, and to try and then learn to live with it.
Well, let's get on to radio then, because you mentioned before that you blagged your way in. So you dreamt of doing it at school. Yep. You go to Rumbelows, MOD, and then how did you blag your way in?
So I used to have the radio on at work. We loved... I worked in a tool hire company at this point.
Right, okay.
And we had the radio on all day, and it wasn't the busiest place. So we would ring in, and... because we used to listen to Beacon, back in the day. I used to do request shows and I used to do loads of competitions. So we'd ring in and try and get on air. And I was always doing like different voices and impressions and things like that. So generally, because we were up for a laugh, we used to get on quite a lot. So that was quite fun. So I got to know some of the guys that were on air, and then got confident enough to go, I want to do this. How do I do it? And they would go, you need to do a demo. So then I'd be asking them for advice on, okay, well, what's a demo? What do I need to do? And they'd just give me some tips and whatever. So I did something in my living room at home on a cassette, and then took it into the radio station. And then I think I kept ringing up every day. And the receptionist there at the time, well, she was like most receptionists, let's just put it that way. Particularly doctors' receptionists. I think you get the type. I won't mention any names.
Yeah.
She hated me because I would ring every day and say, because Pete Wagstaff is probably a name that you'll know. He was the program director at the time. So I was like, has Pete listened to my tape yet? Has Pete listened to my tape yet? And she was just get really arsey and go, no, he has not. He's a busy man. Please stop ringing, which I took no notice of and carried on ringing. And eventually he called me up. And then to my surprise, he was like, I really liked your demo. I want you to come into the radio station and record one here. And I was like, fucking hell, this is like all my dreams come true. So I used to go in like in the evenings after work. And I remember turning up the first time and he put me in the studio and he literally was like, okay, here's some cart machines, here's some stuff to play around with. I'm going to put a reel of tape on here. Just leave that rolling. When you're done, rewind it, put it on my desk. Any questions? And I was like, yeah, how do you work everything else? And obviously I walked in with nothing. He was like, oh, brought nothing in with you, mate. That's brave. So I was like, oh shit, I've screwed this up already. But yeah, I just kept going in and then he'd ring me back after I'd done a demo and tell me what he didn't like about it and what I needed to work on. So, and then eventually, it wasn't after long, I got a weekend overnight show, because obviously radio then was 24 hours a day locally. Yeah.
Great times, yeah.
So I think I did a Saturday into Sunday, 1 a.m. till 6 a.m., which was an interesting experience because there's a very definite audience, a very specialised audience between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. And then, what else did I think I used to do travel reports. I started doing travel reports. So I'd go out in the morning during the week and do travel reports. So I'd just drive around Telford and every 20 minutes ring in to the breakfast show, give them travel updates. And in the afternoons, actually. So I did that for a bit, and then I badgered him to put me on if anybody was on holiday, which I did. So I'd only been there about 9 months, I think. And then the breakfast guy who was on, because Beacon there was 2 stations with Beacon. There was the West Midlands service, and they had the Shropshire licence as well. And the guy who was doing breakfast on West Mids went on holiday for a week. And bearing in mind I was 19, I was like, oh, put me on. So they put me on breakfast for a week. So, I mean, that was brave of them.
Yeah.
So I did a week on breakfast, and then the end of the week, I went into the jocks room. God, there's a phrase you don't hear anymore. Yeah. So, yeah, everybody had a little pigeonhole on the wall, and in the pigeonhole was this bottle of whiskey, and it was from the MD, and it had a little note on it, just said, great week on breakfast. So for me, that was the green light. So I just stormed into Pete's office with my bottle of whiskey and went, oh, if it was that great, put me on full time. And he was like, back in your box. You're not ready for that yet. And I stood and argued the toss with him and convinced him. And in the end, he went, all right then. So they gave me breakfast.
No way.
Which at the time I thought was brilliant. But obviously for the guy who'd been on holiday, not so good. But I never really thought, I didn't think about how it was going to affect him at all. I just bombarded, I careered my way through like a, out of control runaway train.
Do you know the one thing I've learned, Fresh, from talking to so many people over the 3 series that we've done of Crunch and Roll? How much confidence people had. Like, for example, we had Elliot Webb on recently who talked about his confidence. I'm just using him as one of many examples. I mean, how did you all have that? Because I didn't have that confidence.
I think it was the fact that I was so young. 18, 19, you've got no self-awareness at that age. And clearly I had ADHD, which I didn't know about. So you would just, you just become, you are very impulsive with ADHD. You just don't think about stuff. So it was probably a mixture of being a cocky 18-year-old, ADHD, and the fact that I'd got a little bit of recognition. For me, it was almost like, well, in that case then, whoa.
Now, just a couple of things I want to pick up on because, of course, getting the breakfast show is incredible. But just going back, is it true that you smashed up a Jeep whilst you were the travel guy? Because you mentioned that you did a little bit of the travel updates. Yeah. Is that true?
It is true. How did you find this out?
Oh, Nigel.
Oh, don't. Do not call me Nigel. Yes, so, and that was slightly embarrassing because, again, I blagged my way into the radio station. So when I was still doing travel updates, and I hadn't been there very long. But clearly, I thought, fucking hell, I lived in Telford, and I had to go to Wolverhampton to pick the Jeep up, and then drive back over to Telford. And I think the first travel report we had to do was just after the 7:00 news. So I'd have to leave Telford quite early to get to Wolverhampton, and then back to Telford for 7. But generally, I used to think, fuck all going on at 7:00 in the morning. So what I'll do is I'll just pick the Jeep up, do a couple of travel reports while I'm driving back to Telford. Get there for about 7:45. Nobody will know. However, on that fateful day, I was halfway between Wolverhampton and Telford, and some guy came careering across the road right into me, wrote the Jeep off.
Oh my God.
And I remember ringing in to the newsroom, and the news editor at the time, I was like, I've had a really bad accident. I think the Jeep's a write-off. And he didn't say, are you all right or anything? He was like, oh, what a great news story. So I was like, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. It's like, but it was more interested in the news angle than whether or not I was okay. But I suppose it serves myself right because I should have been in Telford, 45 minutes earlier.
We're having a party. Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about doing breakfast because at such a young age, I mean, we're going back to 1990 here. To take over breakfast so early on in your career and at such a young age, I'm just thinking to myself, I mean, did you feel any pressure? Because, I mean, the breakfast show at that time, I'm guessing the listeners would have been huge as opposed to some breakfast shows now. I mean, your shoulders, were they strong? I mean, how did it feel?
Didn't even think about that. Didn't even think about it. No. The thing is, I never wanted to be someone, if that makes sense. I wanted to be on the radio, but I just wanted to be on the radio. I was never chasing fame. So I wasn't bothered about actually being a radio star or, getting any recognition. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking, God, this is great. I get to be on the radio. And that's about as far as I thought. And I had no radio experience. I had no life experience. And I suppose that partly was a good thing because I didn't have any radio baggage. So, I was completely raw and certainly very raw. I had no idea how to put a radio show together, no idea what made good content. It's not like I had lots of radio idols that I wanted to emulate or be like. So I used to use a lot of American prep stuff. There's a thing called, I think it was called O-liners. It was a Dan O'Day thing. In fact, I think Pete hooked me up with this American prep stuff. Yeah. So I used to kind of go through that and kind of get stuff together from that and just throw it together. I mean, there literally was thrown together. But I did it, I thought it was great. And I suppose I delivered it with such enthusiasm. Yeah. And when somebody delivers something with confidence and enthusiasm, it does become a bit infectious, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking about how I was going to get an audience, how big the audience was. I just never, it was never on my radio. I never thought about it. All I was thinking was, wow, I'm on the radio. This is great. That was it.
Now, doing breakfast, were you on your own to start?
Yeah, just me. And then there was a guy who we used to have sort of people come in to do the travel, but they were live. They were actually in the radio station. So, they pop in every 10, 15 minutes. You had a news reader and a sports reader. So there was 3 other people that you could kind of hook in to bounce off. Generally, it was a case of me just delivering a gag and me saying, laugh. So, the usual stuff. But yeah, so it was just me.
So, because I didn't know this, I'm just reading further on. After you do the breakfast show alone, you then do breakfast with Rachel New, and I didn't know the show was called Fresh and New.
Fresh and New.
I love it.
Or was it? No, actually, no, it wasn't. It was called New and Freshman.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and I remember because that's GWR took over in. I think they bought the radio station about 1994, so I'd been there about 4 years then. But they had this autonomous agreement, so it was just left to run as it was for 2 or 3 years. And I think at the end of 96, then GWR management came in, and that's when they kind of ran it for about 6 months, ready to relaunch it as the new Beacon FM. And obviously, GWR's deal then in the 90s was you had to have a morning crew, the morning crew. And it had to be 2 people, it had to be a boy and a girl, and had to do Battle of the Sexes and, yada, yada, yada. And Rachel was at Seven Sound in Gloucester in sales, but she was doing bits on air with the Seven Sound morning crew, and she really wanted to be on air. So they kind of brought her into Beacon and tried her out with me, and we hit it off really well. And then I remember we had to go down to Bristol to meet with Dirk Anthony, mate.
Dirk Anthony, yeah.
Dirk Anthony. And, I can't remember the guys. It was the head of production at the time. I can't remember what his name was, but he was another Australian, which is no surprise because everybody in GWR was Australian. And we had this meeting and to literally discuss what the show was going to be called. And I was like, surely it can't be this difficult. And I think we were discussing this for about an hour and a half. And I was like, it's either going to be Fresh and Rachel and Fresh, Fresh and New. And they were like, Fresh and New, let's think about it. Fresh and New. Yeah, not sure we like that. And I was like, oh my God, kill me now. And in the end, they decided on New and Freshman because I think they thought Fresh and New sounded a little bit too kind of washing powdery or some kind of, advertising tagline. And then they were like, to me, how do you feel about that, having your name second? And I was like, doesn't make a difference to me. But, we just want to go on and have fun. I don't care whether my name's mentioned or not, really. But so if you want to call it New and Freshman, that fine, that's good. As long as I can get out of this meeting as well, it's a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, New and Freshman, that's what it was called.
So, I mean, as I say, I wasn't aware that you worked with Rachel New. So how many years did you do breakfast with Rachel?
It was only a couple of years. GWR, I mean, and they freely admitted they came into Beacon and they didn't really know what to do with it because it was a gargantuan station. It was the biggest station they owned at the time. And, the Beacon in the Black Country had a lot of heritage. It was one of the first ILRs to start. It had a reputation, which I wasn't aware of at the time. In the industry, it was, it was quite a gargantuan station. It was sounding a little bit tired in the 90s. And GWR came in and they kind of relaunched it as the all-new Beacon FM, and the music changed radically because I think at that point we were still playing Beatles stuff in the 60s.
Really?
Yeah, because everybody else had become like a hot FM. And, so I used to listen to BR&B, which is BR&B Music Power. And you had Andy Hollins has the hits in the morning and all that massive production. And we had the kind of jingle package from WABC New York, which is like trumpets. And I was like, oh my God, what granddad station am I at? And you listen to BR&B and it had all this really big production. So it was a little bit in need of change, but they changed it so radically that it really, it's a shame that I don't think you'd see this kind of reaction from a radio audience anymore, but there was people picketed outside the radio station with placards.
Really?
Yeah, we'd come in the morning and there'd be curbstones had been thrown through the window, and I think it was one morning, like somebody'd kept a bottle of milk until it had gone rancid, and then lobbed that through the window so that it stained into the carpet and all sorts. And there was bomb threats against the program director. Somebody rang up and said they put a bomb under his car. Mate, I've never witnessed anything like it, because they changed the radio station so dramatically overnight.
Wow, blimey.
Yeah. So they were a little bit jittery after that, GWR, and then they kind of changed things on a whim. So, they'd get a set of radar numbers, and then they'd go, right, it's not working, change everything. So we were only on Breakfast, I think, together for a couple of years, and then they put Rachel on Shropshire Drive, I think.
Right.
And then I think they put me with somebody else. And again, and then I think eventually I came off Breakfast.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so about 99, I think, I came off Breakfast, and they'd started digital radio then as well. GWR were, one of the main sort of digital radio pioneers, and they'd started Planet Rock. And I remember Dirk saying to me, mate, you'd be great on Planet Rock. Do you want to do Planet Rock? And I was like, yeah, sounds cool. Digital radio, this is all new and exciting. So I came off Breakfast, and I think I went to Drive, and I was doing Planet Rock Breakfast at the time. And I did that for about 7 years, I think. I did a bit of program management at kind of in between times, and then came back to Breakfast in 2006.
I do want to touch on the Planet Rock stuff, but then I do want to go back to the Beacon stuff, because that is the majority of your career, which is just incredible, the amount of time that you spent at one station. I mean, most of us are quite jealous how you achieve. I mean, how do you think you managed to stay at Beacon for so long? And don't go for a radio jock's answer of, well, I was just lucky or whatever. There must have been a reason.
Fuck knows. I don't know. Clearly I was resonating with the audience, and I was creating a name for myself, but again, I was completely unaware of that, because it wasn't that I was chasing. I just loved being on the radio. For me, that was where my thinking ended. But we started doing like prank phone calls. I mean, who didn't in the 90s? I think Pete Wagstaff had heard Steve Penk do them on Key 103. And he was like, oh, we should do prank phone calls. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. So, and I was quite good at doing accents and impressions, so I could disguise my voice quite well. So we started Freshman's Phone Scam, and that took off massively. And I used to get so many letters, because that was the way you communicated with the radio station back then. People had to write in. But I remember getting this really thick file of letters with all of these people nominating people for phone scams. So that obviously resonated quite well. And I was quite, I suppose I wasn't your average radio presenter, because like I say, at the time, it was Hot FM, and there was a lot of hot jockeying and radio voices, and I didn't do any of that. I just went on the radio and blurted stuff out, really. So I was a bit left field, I guess. But obviously it must have resonated somewhere along the line, because I didn't get fired. Oh, actually, no, I did. I did get a little bit fired.
A little bit fired.
I got a little bit fired. When GWR steamed in with their own management, the MD that they put in at Beacon hated me. Absolutely hated me. The first thing...
Why? Why did he hate you?
Well, apparently, on his first day, he arrived and he walked into reception. I had a BMW at the time. I had a 5 Series BMW. And he walked in and said to the receptionist, whose is the BMW in the car park? And she went, oh, that's Fresh's. And he went, Fresh? And she went, yeah, he's one of the presenters. He went, oh, right. Obviously a very successful presenter. And from that moment, just clearly disliked me. So we never saw eye to eye. So I always thought he was gunning to find a reason to get rid of me. And there was we used to have there used to be a traffic department in the radio station. So ad traffic, not actually traffic reports.
Yeah.
People who schedule all the ads. And we used to have a physical ad log paper, because you used to have to get all your ads out on cart. And actually, no, I think we had a play-out system by then. It was a really basic thing. It was called DAMS, which was terrible. But it would tell you the number of the carts you'd have to punch in. You'd have to load it all manually, every ad break. And I think GWR were introducing this soulless ad spot out of each news bulletin, because they were, I don't know whether that was some deal with Traffic Link or the AA or whoever it was at the time, or whether they were hoping to sell it for a premium or what. But they kind of put it in as a spot holder to start with, and they were just putting filler adverts in there. So I asked the question, why are we playing adverts we don't actually need to be playing? If we haven't sold that spot yet, why are we adding extra inventory in? And they were like, oh, yes, that's a fairly good point, actually. We didn't think of that. I said, well, why don't we wait till we're getting the money in and then stick the ads in? If we're not getting paid to play ads, what's the point of playing them? So they were like, oh, yeah, yeah. But then didn't say, don't play them. I just took it on myself to not play them. So, and not only that, then I would go, then I went through the rest of the ad log for the day, crossed them all out for everybody else's shows. So I remember getting collared in the car park by the managing director one day, and he went, oh, conversation we need to have about the ad log. And I went, oh, yeah, I have had a conversation with Dave about that. He went, yeah, but we haven't had this conversation, so let's have it now. Oh, and then, it took me inside, and they basically fired me. So they said, I'm in breach of contract, that's the end. You can leave right now, or you can go to, I can't remember what show I was. I think I must have been doing breakfast at the time. So you can go to Drive, and we're going to cut your show rate down. But, hey, it's take it or leave it. You're either out of the door, or you can go to afternoons quietly and graciously and take less money. And so because I didn't have anything else to do, I was like, oh, okay, then I'll just do that. So that's when I went to afternoons. So it was kind of I think I was suspended for a week, and then they came back and said, oh, yeah, you can have this deal.
I mean, all that fresh because you were a BMW wanker.
Yep, exactly.
Now, we mentioned Rachel New before doing Breakfast with Rachel, but I mean, I think the show that everybody remembers you for, of course, is with Joe, Fresh and Joe. That was the...
Yes.
I mean, if you talk to anybody about Beacon, the first thing they'll say is Fresh and Joe. I mean, how she was a character, wasn't she, Joe?
Joe, she is a character. She's gold. She is absolute gold for anybody in radio, because she is just a walking bank of content. She has the most calamitous life on a daily basis, and I still to this day, because I'm still really good friends with Jo, and I saw her not long ago, a couple of weeks ago. I was around her house, and she still has all of these stories about things that have happened to her every single day. I mean, just being with her is tiring, because just so much content. So, I mean, she was great to work with, because she would just go, oh, Fresher, you not believe what happened to me. And I'll go, save it for 8:10. Right? So I would just say, so she would have all of this stuff. So then I'd just say, she would do the planner. So I'd say, right, just write it all in the planner and then leave it with me. And then all I had to do was literally light the blue touch paper, sit back, and watch the after effects. So I was just like, it was like conducting an orchestra. So all I had to do was kind of weave in, get Joe to tell the story, kind of dive in a little bit, maybe pull a little bit of information out, turn to the audience. They would always react. The amount of phone calls she would propagate. The phones just lit up every time she talked about anything. And we had so many callers. It was absolutely mind-blowing. But again, we were just having a great time on air every day. And we weren't thinking about, how big that show was becoming or how big it was. We just went in and had a laugh every single day. But she is just incredible. I mean, her background is drama. She did drama workshops and all sorts. And she lived in London for a while, so she's great at storytelling, a brilliant performer. And the other thing that was great about Jo is she understood radio. So, I mean, she's worked in theatre, so she understands how to tell a story to an audience and how to captivate them. But she didn't give a shit about radio formatics or anything like that. She just didn't care about radio. She's like, oh, Freshy, you just deal with all that. She just wanted to come in and chat and, tell stories and have a laugh. And, the audience, because we used to go out and meet people all the time, people gravitated to her and they would tell her everything. And the first thing she would do whenever she met, good God, we couldn't do this now. But whenever we went anywhere, the first thing she'd say, for instance, we meet some people, she'd go to a woman, oh, your tits are great. Are they real? And just grab them. And I'd be like, Jo, and I felt like I had to apologise. It felt like I had to I was just there to be her carer and apologise for the aftermath that she would leave behind. She'd grab guys by the cock and, oh my God. I remember we went to this metal fabricators once and there was an anvil in there and she just got her baps out and put them either side of the anvil and was like, oh, Freshy, take a picture. But she was she's just great fun. She is absolutely hysterical. And I can't believe, I can't believe how much goes wrong in her life.
Do you know, I was very fortunate in my career to work with people, some real friends. So initially with Tom, and then I went on to work with Giuliano, real friends. And then I went to Signal and worked with a girl called Emma, who was fantastic as well. But just the importance of actually having a friendship with your co-host for me, is paramount. If you want to make a breakfast show successful, because I've known of breakfast shows where they hate each other. We've had previous guests where they say, yeah, it was a bit cold when the mics were down, but it sounds to me that you and Jo, you really had that real friendship.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, Jo was with Mark Jeeves before, and I know Mark won't mind me talking about this, but those two didn't get on. So they would be on air together, and then at 10 o'clock they would separate, and they wouldn't socialise. There was very little communication between the two of them, and that's how they worked. But they were like poles apart. Mark is very, hello there. Yes, I'm very straight-laced, and Jo's she's full of debauchery, and it was that chemistry worked, but they just didn't get on personally. But I think when you have chemistry and you become great friends with people, it's not a job then, is it? You're just literally hanging out with your mates. And, people are just listening in to what's going on. And, if you're lucky, they want to be involved in it. And that's why Friends, the TV show, was so successful. It's not, if you look at it, some of the writing is pretty shit. But what carried that show is the chemistry between the cast. I watch some of the early episodes of Friends back now, and the writing is not that strong, and some of the acting isn't that strong. It's only when you get a few seasons in and they've all kind of bonded and whatever that show took on a life of its own. Yeah. And you can't. It's the same with Clarkson, Hammond, and May. You can't replicate that chemistry. I mean, look at Top Gear. They tried, because when they left, there was Chris Evans, Matt LeBlanc, Rory Reid, Chris Harris came in, Freddie Flintoff, Paddy. They've tried to. You cannot manufacture chemistry. It's either there or it isn't. You either become great friends with somebody or you don't. It's not something. I mean, GWR, when Friends was becoming really popular, GWR tried to do that. They wanted to hire. They didn't. They started to cast the morning show. And they had these specific roles based on how Friends was. So I think one was an innocent fool, one was a smart guy, smart Alec. So then they would try to define. So then, because I remember me and Rachel had this workshop with them. And they were like, okay, so Rachel, who do you think you are? Are you the smart Alec or the smart guy? And we were looking at each other. We're like, well, we're just us. We are who we are. We're not. You can't suddenly pigeonhole us into something. You can't manufacture. You cannot take Friends, for instance, and then try and remanufacture it. It won't work unless you find a bunch of people who have genuine chemistry. Counts for so much.
So we've talked a lot, Fresh, about, people mention you and Jo and your breakfast show just being incredible. I do want to talk about, I was talking to a mate of mine who, I won't mention his name on here, but he was your biggest fan. and he is Mr. Beacon. And he was talking to me about the time that you gave Christmas early to a terminally ill kid. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a kid, it was a woman.
Right, tell me more.
Yeah, her name was Yvette. And we had an email, I think, from her sister. And it was literally, I think we came into it one morning. And, you know, Joe, we just said, well, we need to do something with this. So Joe read it out on air. We hadn't planned anything. We didn't, you know, usually in radio, if you want something to go somewhere, you do some pre-planning. You might have a couple of things staged just to get the momentum, and then it kind of grows by itself. This, we didn't do any of that. We just literally read the email on air. Joe was in floods of tears, and then the phone lines went mad. So I think it was probably a end of November, I think. And this email was basically saying that this poor woman had got terminal cancer, and it didn't look like she was going to make it till Christmas. And she had like young kids, you know. And I think she was like, is there any way we could do something just to kind of give the kids a little bit of an early, or give the family a bit of a Christmas before Christmas? Yeah. So we read the email out, and then it just went ballistic. We had like Asda ringing up, going, "We're going to give you, you know, a hamper of stuff." The Lions Club were like, "Right, we're going to send our sleigh there." We had people saying, "Well, I've got a snow machine. I've got, you know, we had some like a choir. They rang in and said, we'll come and do some Christmas caroling." We had companies ringing up, pledging cash. We had people ringing up going, "We're going to give presents. We want to donate presents for the kids." Oh, honestly, it was mind blowing. And then we managed to get all this. I can't even remember. It was such a whirlwind and totally unexpected. I can't even remember how we managed to kind of pull it all together, but we literally got all of this stuff together, went round to the house, and we had this snow machine there, and then the Lions turned up with Santa on his sleigh, and there's carolers, and there's all of these people turned up, like well-wishers, just to rally round and just give the kids and the family, that kind of Christmas together. I think this is like early December, and it was just overwhelming. The response and the way people rallied round. And I think that's what makes radio so special. You cannot get that from a streaming service. And you don't get that from, podcasts because they're not live. Radio has still got that place in people's lives because it can have that kind of immediacy and just, it's just that connection people have with the radio is just... There's nothing else that can take that place. That's what happened on that occasion. It just blew up. It was absolutely just mesmerising.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the commission per se. The dealer does a lot of work in order to...
Well, I'm all for being open-minded, but I'm not all for discussing this live on air. Thank you.
We are profoundly sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Previous guests that I would say, I'm going to talk about Elliot Webb again. In my opinion, because I was, I don't really remember Les Ross. I would call Elliot Mr. BRMB. With yourself, I would certainly say you are Mr. Beacon. And, if the breakfast show people would always talk about, and they would always mention you. I just wanted to talk about, would you say that, because coming from up north, then moving down south and then coming to the Midlands, I wasn't really across what Beacon was about. Would you say it was quite a unique radio station?
Yeah, because like I say, it was really anchored in its market. It was really fondly thought of, and it just had this massive, loyal following. It was, the audience, like I say, they bolted onto it and they were really protective of it. It was kind of a living, breathing thing. It wasn't just a radio station. It was part of the fabric of the area. It was, it was different to all the other stations. it didn't follow that sort of hot FM Johnny Jock thing, which everybody else went down in the 90s. They just, I mean, yeah, it sounded a bit old hat, but it still worked. It needed a bit of tweaking, and then it had a revolution. What it needed was an evolution. But yeah, it was a unique radio station. But again, I don't know whether that was just an accidental thing or what it was, but it just seemed to have this sort of magical formula in terms of its connection with the market and its listeners. It was pretty incredible.
It's interesting as well because in 2001 you become the station manager of Beacon.
Yeah, well, they had two services. They had the West Midlands and they had Shropshire. And I got to run the Shropshire service. So I was on air on West Mids and then took over the running of the Shropshire service. And I think this is because I think at the time, GWR had tried all sorts and it wasn't going their way particularly well because they just didn't know what to do. I think they were in panic mode by this point because they kept sort of wavering. And so they wanted to focus on the big money transmitter, which was the West Midlands one, 97.2. And so I remember them saying to me, do you want to look after Shropshire? You can do whatever you want, but you won't have a budget. And I was like, great. And for me, it's like, okay, so I've got to come up with a solution. So problem solving, I love. And again, I think that's something that goes, I think that's when you've got a brain that's, that's got ADHD, coming up with ideas isn't difficult. You're constantly like, hey, we could do this, what about that? And if you've got a problem, then you can think of a billion ways to try and solve it. So I used to work with sales a lot and we'd get sold contests and stuff like that. So it was great fun and I worked really closely with all the guys on air. And that was really, I loved kind of coaching and just developing the talent as well. That was really good fun. And I think I did that for about 5 years. And I think I was doing Planet Rock at the same time as well.
Yeah, sorry, I've completely skipped over Planet Rock, and we will get to that in just a bit. But you're right, you were station manager between 2001 and 2006. You won Sony Station of the Year whilst you're in. I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah, I don't ever think really that station never got the recognition it should have at the Sonys. I always felt like it was a bit looked down on, a little bit sneered at, and I think that's because. It kind of wasn't. It booked the trend. It wasn't It wasn't a fashionable radio station, I think. So I mean, because when I was on Breakfast with Joe, we would always be putting kind of stuff in for the Sonys, and sometimes we'd get nominated, but never got a win. And I think that Station of the Year thing, I can't remember how that just came about. It just came about one year, but I was it was a bit of one of the school sports day. Oh, give it to the small Shropshire station. Bless them.
Still a hell of an achievement, though. Still a hell of an achievement. And then I've talked to many guests who've gone into management at some point in their career, and I would say that a majority of them didn't enjoy it. And the reason I think is because you do have to sack people if you're in management. I mean, did you find that side of radio difficult?
I loved hiring because you get to listen to people and you kind of get to think about how they're going to sound on your radio station and, trying people out with other people. And, that kind of whole casting part is great fun. But then obviously, with radio talent comes, radio egos at times.
No.
Yeah, I know. And like I say, I think, and that's probably because of ADHD. I probably didn't respond very well to people who had too much of an ego. So I probably didn't. I only had to let one person go, or I think they may have decided to depart. When you send the email around, such and such has decided to pursue other projects with immediate effect.
Yeah.
So I think that only happened once. But, I wanted them to go, but I didn't actually physically have to say, look, you're going. They just decided to go.
During that time, there was a very difficult situation, I guess, and all people in radio will know of this, the Soham incident. Can you just run us through that?
Every time I sit in compliance training now, they always play.
Oh, do they?
They play that audio, and I'm like, can I just go? Thanks, I've heard this enough. But I had only just started managing that radio station, so literally, I don't know whether it was the first day of me kind of taking over, or it was certainly in the very early stages. And I can remember I was just coming out of my house ready to go to work. So it was about 7:30 in the morning, I think. And I got a call on my mobile, and it was the guy on air who was going, "Oh, mate, we've just done this link, and the news guy's having a right go at us. Could you have a word? Because he just won't back off." And I'm like, "Well, what have you said?" Because I hadn't heard it. And he kind of relayed it, and I was like, "Oh, fucking hell." I was like, "Well, yeah, you do know why he's having a go at you." And he's like, "What?" So I was just like, "Okay, look, just don't say any more. I'm on my way in." And my boss, who was the PC or PD of the West Mid side, obviously rang me, and he was like beside himself. And I think he was already at the radio station in Wolverhampton. So I think he pulled them off. And then they just played music. So the show just went to music, I think. And then I think from that morning, I don't think I dealt with that. I think it was then dealt with by upper management. They kind of took it over and did everything official. They suspended them, I think, from that day. And then they obviously went into damage limitation, and they had to deal with the Attorney General and all sorts. It was a horrendous period, but that I didn't get involved in that. So, and it was probably a good job, because I wouldn't have known how to deal with any of that. Because, like I say, it was I hadn't been at it long, so that all got sort of taken out of my hands. And in the end, they ended up. I think they had to fire them, and that was part of appeasing the Attorney General's office. So that there was a back and forth with them negotiating, because obviously they were at risk of losing the license and all sorts. It was heavy consequences. So they had to be seen to be taking a firm stance. Had to fire them. They had to go. And I think I went on breakfast for a bit then in Shropshire. So I had to go in to cover Shropshire breakfast while we were thinking, what the hell are we going to do next? And then we had to look for a new morning show. But I think I did breakfast for about 3 or 4 months. Because obviously they'd just gone suddenly.
I love the fact that you sit in compliance training and that pops up.
And hear that. Yeah. But I mean, see, there wasn't any compliance training or anything like that. It's only come up. Things only happen when things go wrong. Yeah. And there was no routine compliance training. And this is absolutely no defence whatsoever. But it had happened during the Shipman trial as well, because there was this, station up in Preston, where they said something about that. And we weren't briefed. Nobody went through this with you. And I think at the time, GWR were working with an American consultant. And he had this, I think it was called Authentic Radio Personality, TM. And basically it was like, hey, be yourself. Things that interest you, talk about them on the radio. If you have a reaction to something, talk about it on the radio. So they were being told, be authentic, and things that you react to, communicate those to your audience. But there was, and common sense has to come into that, I know, but there was no, hey guys, but let's go over compliance training, or remember, we can't do X, Y, Z. And he was from Cambridge as well, so he had a massive reaction to what he'd seen on Sky News, and stupidly went on air and talked about it during the trial.
It was a technical problem. You heard something on air you shouldn't have done.
Oh yeah. Now, before we get on to the moment that Orion turn up and take over Beacon, I just want to go back to Planet Rock. So, during your time at Beacon, you do the breakfast show for Planet Rock. Was that live? Because you said you moved to afternoons, but did you do breakfast live?
No, it was all voice tracked, and this was all new back then. So it was called internet voice tracking at the time. So it was. I think it ran off master control, and so they installed this PC at Beacon, and then you had to connect via dial-up, I think. So you had all that while you're trying to connect to Bristol, where everything was. And you'd get like this sort of remote screen, which is kind of a shrunk version of Master Control, and then you'd just be able to record your links. But it was quite clunky because the internet was so slow back then. But the whole thing was voice track. There wasn't any live programming from day one. The only time Planet Rock went live was when it came out of GWR's ownership, and that guy bought it for £1 or whatever he paid for it, and then he put live shows on it.
Is it true that you used to voice track it very close to the actual TX though?
So I can't remember what hours it ran now, but I would record the first hour or so of links the previous day, and then come in just so it could be topical, because I didn't want it to, in case something had happened overnight, I didn't want breakfast to sound out of date or too generic. So I would just come in and then drop the rest of the morning's links through. Or I would record the entire show the day before, and then if I'd got anything like topical and whatever that I thought I could overwrite some links with, I'd drop like sporadic links in like that.
So let's move back to Beacon, the time that Orion Media come in. I don't keep it a secret. I thought my time at Orion Media was fantastic. It was just probably the highlight of my career, working on BRMB, a station I just never dreamt of even visiting, let alone presenting on. But your opinion of Orion Media?
Do I have to give one? Do I need to give one? Should I give one?
I don't think you ever kept it a secret that perhaps you weren't overly keen. But I mean, to be fair,
you tell me then. You tell me, because obviously you've heard things. So you tell me what you've heard, and I'll confirm or deny.
I heard, Fresh, that perhaps you didn't see eye to eye with one of the senior managers. True or false?
I don't know who you're talking about. I got on so well with everybody. That is possibly true, yes.
And is that because of Orion, or was that because of a previous working relationship?
I just felt that he had no idea what he was doing.
Okay. I sensed in team meetings where all the Orion breakfast shows got together, I don't think you kept that as a secret.
Didn't I?
I don't think so, no.
Oh. I probably wasn't aware of how I was coming across at the time, but I don't think they did a good job. I mean, I don't think I'm unjust in saying that, because look what happened to the ratings.
Actually, let me just think back to the many episodes. Nope, I've never felt so awkward talking about something with anyone.
Well, I can't believe you. I mean, I suppose, yeah, because you got to go and be on BRMB, I understand that. But surely you didn't think at the time what was going on there was great.
I think I perhaps see it through different eyes because, as I just said, I never, and I genuinely mean this, I never thought I'd get on a station like BRMB. And I never, ever thought I'd get the breakfast show. And for all that to happen, in the course of a year, for myself and Giuliano, yeah, for me, it was amazing.
So did that taint or blinker your view of what was going on in terms of the direction from the management?
Can I be honest?
Yeah, please do.
I thought what we were doing on BRMB was great.
Really?
I had an amazing group of people around me. Do you know what? Funny enough, we had Joe Russell on, who went through the same experiences that I did, going, into Orion Media and BRMB, and a lot of people, maybe moved on at the time. But I said to Joe, and I'll say to you, do you know what? I'm not going to lie anymore. I really did enjoy my experience of Orion. So I can't lie to you. I mean, it was obviously very different for you because you were Mr. Beacon, and you probably shake your head at that, but you were. I mean, if you mention Beacon, people mention you. So for a group to come in and then change things dramatically, which they did, that probably did piss you off a little bit.
Yeah, but like I say, GWR made a bigger hash of it in 1997, but the one thing they did do was hold their hands up and go, do you know what? I think we fucked this up a bit. And, didn't pretend that everything they were doing was the right thing and a great idea. And that it pisses me off when you've got smoke and mirrors and people aren't being honest. And we could all see what was happening with, collectively, the performance of all of the radio stations in that group.
So I don't remember you leaving Beacon, if I'm honest. I remember people taking over that breakfast show from you. So how did that happen? Did your contract run out, or did you just mutually agree to go on to pastures new?
Yeah, I wanted to get out. There was a toxic environment for me. There's no fun there anymore. When someone's coming to you every day with an iPad full of notes about everything they hated about every single link, there's no joy. And I think in one of those sessions, it got down to I don't like the way you said oomph on the date. So for me, I was like, shoot me now. And I was frank and honest, and I was like, to me, it sounds like I'm not the right person for your breakfast show, so why don't we just cut the shit and I'll go? And then it'd be like, oh, no, that's not what I'm saying. Well, for me, it's like, well, that is what you're saying, isn't it? Because you've just told me everything I've said you hate. And I can't work in an environment like that. Radio is supposed to be fun and entertaining. If we're not having fun, the audience aren't going to be having fun. And I just don't want to work in that kind of environment. So I wanted to get the hell out of there. And so, I just said, look, that's it. I want to just get out. I don't want to renew my contract. I want to go.
I just want to talk about, and I asked the same question to everybody that spends the length of time that you did at a radio station. How did it feel when you eventually walked out of Beacon for that final time?
It felt great.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, at that point, I was, ecstatic to be going.
All right, well, let's talk about Smooth, because, of course, 2014, you go to Smooth. They brought back local breakfast shows just because of you. It was just down to you, wasn't it?
Don't think it was down to me.
You could have just gone along with that then, mate. You'd have got away with that.
Yes, that's right. They were so desperate to sign me that they created a space for me. That's exactly what happened.
Are you still enjoying your time on Smooth? I know you've got to say yes because you're still there.
Radio is really different now. Very different. But for me, it's still great fun. I've still got exactly the same attitude. I still stand in the studio every day, and we're all big anoraks. When you hit the start button and a jingle plays, and then you fire off a song, it's still exciting. Still that 9-year-old me going, "Oh my God, I just played a jingle and a song." So I still go in and I still think, God, I cannot believe I get to do this every day. This is what I do for a living. So that joy is still there. It's just radio is just it's infectious for me. I just love being on the radio. There's just something about it. It's like a drug. It's just I can't give it up.
This February it'll be coming up to a decade on Smooth.
I know.
Can you believe that amount of time has gone past?
No, I can't. It's unbelievable. 10 years. I thought, and I said to the guys at the time, I feel like a bit of a fish out of water on Smooth because, when I went there, it was a genre. They wanted a kind of a mood. No, it was a mood-based station. So they went for this kind of relaxing sound. And I'd just come from what had become Free, which is sort of, hot AC. Mm-hmm. And we were, I was with Cat James at the time. So it was lots of content and it was, personality and daft stuff, stunts, all sorts of things, to this kind of, soft AC format. And I said, I stick out like a sore thumb. I haven't got that kind of smooth and here's a great song from the Carpenters. That's, I didn't have that. And And so I feel like a fish out of water. So I thought, this isn't going to last very long. They're going to listen, after my first year, they're going to go, so thanks. Anyway, we're going to go in a different direction. But, the rage jar, it kind of came out of nowhere smooth. And then suddenly it just shot up. And, now it's up there. In fact, it's beating heart at breakfast quite consistently.
Oh, yeah. Well, Fresh, thank you so much for being on Crunch and Roll. Have you enjoyed yourself?
It's been like therapy.
Everyone says that.
It's been like therapy.
Everyone says that, yeah.
I don't know how you're going to find anything of interest. I mean, I circle back to what I said at the start. I don't know how you're going to find anything of interest in there. And certainly anything that your mate Pete thinks is slanderous. Take that out. Do us a favour, John, will you? Do us a favour, John. Don't take anything dodgy out. I'm trusting you on that.
I've really, 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 and I genuinely mean it, I've really enjoyed chatting to you for the last hour. So thank you so much. I don't know if you're just playing the part, but you are a very engaging character. So thank you.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. What a beautiful bonding session this is.
You're still sarky as fuck, but I mean, you're
hey, always have been, always will be. Even at the most inappropriate times.
Do you know? And I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I always ask the guests, who would you like to hear on Crunch and Roll? Who deserves their own episode?
Oh my God! You should definitely try and get Joe on. That
was the answer hilarious. I thought you were going to say. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I'd like to do what Simon does, and that's just sit in the background and watch what happens when you and Joe hook up, because I want to see the scared look on your face.
Well, do you know what? One of the dreams of Crunch and Roll is to start bringing teams back together that once worked.
Oh, that would be great fun. Yeah, that would be great fun to do.
As long as there's no anvil involved, then I'm more than happy to get you and Joe back together.
Well, here's the thing. I've been talking to Joe, because Joe left in 2011.
Wow.
So we stopped working together in 2011. From that moment on, I said, well, let's do a podcast. 12 years ago, podcasts were still in their infancy. But even then, I remember at the time, we were doing one of those kind of best bits. Everybody was doing a best bits podcast. So you just cobble together some of the stuff you'd done that week on the radio, throw it together. And we said to the management, we don't want to do that. We want to do an original podcast. So we want to do like uncut, unheard, like an extra show.
Yeah.
So, and they were like, oh, no, just do best bits. So we never got around to doing like a bespoke podcast. So I said to her when she left, let's do a podcast, Joe. And she's like, oh, Fresher, that would be great fun. But she's so difficult to pin down. 12 years down the line, I'm still saying to her, Joe, we should do a podcast. But do you know what her reply to me is? Oh, who's going to listen to that? No one cares about what I've got to say. It's like, well,
we're
Joe,
all the same.
We managed to be quite successful on the radio, amazingly. So people must be quite interested.
I love it. Well, we should road test that idea on Crunch and Roll before someone else nicks the idea. Fresh, thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome. You've been listening to Crunch and Roll with me, Nigel Freshman. You can subscribe on your favourite podcast app to get every new episode as soon as they drop. Crunch and Roll is a 969 media production presented by John Fox and produced by Simon Basowski? Oh, yeah. Also, do I have to say Nigel Freshman?
No, you don't.
Do you know that's not actually my real name?
What?
Yeah. Unlike many people, I actually changed my name to be the on-air name.
No way.
Yeah, I did it by deed poll. Oh, years ago, about 20-odd years ago now.
So hang on. Yeah. So I'm completely confused. You are called Nigel.
So, yeah, actually, I don't know why I didn't change the Nigel bit, to be fair.
Well, that's
thinking about
I'm going to be honest with you, Fresh. That was the first thing I thought.
Yeah, I've never liked that name ever since I was a kid, and I always told my parents, I still tell my mom to this day, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? She was like, oh, it was, everybody was calling their kids John and, Michael, and I was like, yeah, either of those would have been fine, thanks. They're like, oh, we wanted something different. I was like, yeah, great. I didn't.